evening. My name is Sharon Hansen. I'm the Public Programs Assistant here at the Crocker Art Museum. It is my honor to welcome you to the 3rd Annual Unite at the Crocker Art Museum.
I'm delighted to welcome you to this session of cross-disciplinary migrations, poetry in Italian and in translation. What we're doing originated in a contemporary modern Italian poetry class, but has gone well beyond the class by now. And I've watched my students progress over the last few years, and they've given me really quite a lot of joy. So I'm delighted to do this with them and be able to share their talents with you. We're going to approach poetry through art and through music. So different approaches to poetry: art, music, voice. And the compositions, of course, of the musical compositions will be by Miguel Robertson, who just completed his senior recital here at Sac State, and Sullivan is a baritone. He also just completed his senior recital. So we're going to begin with Sarah Stroud, who is going to recite and talk to us a little bit about the work she's done on Gianfranco Palmieri, who is a contemporary Roman poet who recently passed away. Sarah's paper was so excellent that it's gone to the Palmieri archives in Rome. So she's going to share a little bit of that with us, and then read the poem. First in English, we decided, and then in Italian.
Hello. So I'm going to begin with a bit of analysis on the poem before the reading. So just as Professor Carle mentioned, Gianfranco Palmieri is a contemporary Italian poet who passed away last year. He composed 3 poems about Medusa. These 3 poems were based on Caravaggio's painting of the head of Medusa, which is painted upon a 3D shield, which is pictured in the PowerPoint right there. And what is unique about this painting is that the face of Medusa is actually a self-portrait of Caravaggio himself. In his poems, Palmieri then follows the same theme, placing himself in the place of the painter, which adds an additional layer of reflection. Then the audience of the poem is asked to place itself in the poet's perspective. This allows for multiple layers of reflection between the audience, poet, and painter. Medusa is then a stand-in for art, poetry, artist, and the audience. Another layer to consider is the immediateness of this reflection. The poem is written in the present tense, even though its subject is a decapitated head, indicating that art remains current every time it is in contemplation. It is not relevant that Caravaggio painted this auto-mythological portrait in the 16th century, or that Palmieri published this poem last year. What is important is that we are thinking about this art in our present. Our self-reflection is current, therefore keeping this art alive. So of Palmieri's 3 poems about Medusa, I will be reading his second poem, Medusa Due, which is Medusa 2, where I believe the theme of reflection is most prevalent. And the poem, I'll read first my own English translation. Only a head extinguished, that rages harshly, serpentine fury that on itself throws itself, writhes itself like a worm, a vermilion red fury that severs its veins, remains this head, earth and blood, that splashes its poison in 1,000 flashes of serpent, bleeds and poison itself of itself. And now for Palmieri's original Italian version. Solo una testa spenta, che imperversa violenta, furia serpentina che su di sé, si avventa, si torce, vermicula, una furia venerea che si svena, resta questa testa, pera e sangue, che schizza I suoi veleni in 1000 guizzi d'angue, sanguina e sa velena di sé. Thank you.
Presenter is going to talk to us about Giacomo Leopardi, who's a very famous Italian romantic poet, philosopher, translator. His entire intellectual sort of laboratory notebook was recently published last year in Great Britain. It's over 4,500 pages. He has many dimensions to his work. Carlos has painted a series of paintings, on the poem Alla Luna, to the moon. So he's going to read us the poem in English and Italian, and then he's going to talk to us a little bit about how he paints poetry and the connections he makes between poetry and art. So Carlos Gonzalez.
This is one of 20 small paintings that I did based on the poem to the moon, a la luna of Leopardi, and those paintings are just very much space, and my idea was to combine a poem and then painting that poem. So the moon, to the moon, it is a poem that we all can relate, and that's why I decided to paint scenes or landscapes where we could find everywhere, and then that way we could lead us, or we could relate a little bit into the poem of Leopardi. This is the final painting that I did. It is really simple. It became more like a idealistic landscape than a realistic landscape. And the reason it is because in part it is like in contrast of what the poem is saying, but also it is based on those little studies that I did and then in the painting too. I mean in the poem of the party. So there is the original version in Italian of the party. Alla luna. Oh graziosa luna, io mi rammento che orvolge l'anno. Sopra questo colle io venia piena angoscia a rimirarti, e tu pendevi allora su quella selva secondo il fai, che tutta la rischiavi. Ma nebuloso e tremulo dal pianto che mi sorgea sul ciglio, alle mie luci tu volta apparia. Che travagliosa è la mia vita, ed è nei canti estivi, oh mia diletta luna. Eppur mi giova la ricordanza di innoverar l'età del mio dolore. Oh, come grato corre nel tempo giovanile, quando ancora lungo le speme e breve alla memoria il corso, e rimembrar delle passate cose, ancora che tristi, e che la fanno dolore. Thank you.
Now, Barbara Carle will read something about
Poems we studied in the course that originated all of this were contemporary and modern poetry, and Leopardi is, we consider him modern in Italian poetry. But I decided to include Petrarch because he's really a source of lyric poetry and one of the most imitated poets, I think, of all time. So I worked a lot actually on trying to translate him. So just to give you a few ideas about his work in general, he has major works of prose in Latin, which you see here, especially the Secretum, which is a dialogue, and then many letters as well, and dialogues. Two collections of poetry. One is I Trionfi, which is an allegorical text, and then, of course, the most important text for which he's known, what we call in Latin, the original title is Rerum Vulgarium Fragmenta, and that means scattered rhymes in the vernacular. It's also known, we call it in Italian, the canzoniere. So the major themes of the canzoniere have to do with love. Laura and his love for Laura, all sorts of other themes enter. Despair, solitude, aging, loss of self, memory, transformation, metamorphosis, nature, creativity, light, time, death. These are all themes that are treated in Petrarch's poems. The Rime Sparse consists of 366 poems, one for each day of the year. So I have the breakdown of the types of poems. The first part is from 1 to 263 and is during the life of Laura. The second is 264 to 366. And I'm going to recite a poem which is Sonnet 235 for you. So it's towards the end of the first part, which means there is a certain foreboding of death, loss of self, okay, and despair in this particular poem. So this is a version, I've worked a lot on this, just to give you an idea of the Italian, is the main purpose of this, okay? And then I'll read you the original. Love transports me to an unwanted art, and well I know that all duty is transgressed. Thus, for the monarch who reigns in my heart, I have become importunate and obsessed. No helmsman steered his only ship through tides, as I have done, never afraid to wrestle the currents or cliffs, guiding my frail vessel amidst the battering blows of such harsh pride. And yet, these tearful rains with fearsome winds of infinite size now drive my vessel on throughout a sea of winter and horrid night, bestowing tedium to one, aches and chagrin to itself, nothing else, vanquished by the strong sea surf, disarming sails to ungoverned might. Lasso, amor mi trasporta ove io non voglio, e ben m'accorgo che il veder si varca, onde a chi nel mio cor siede monarca, sono importuno assai, più chi non soglio. Né mai il saggio nocchier guardò da scoglio, nave di merci preziose carca, quant'io sempre la debole mia barca, dalle percosse del suo duro orgoglio. Ma lagrimosa pioggia e fieri venti, di infiniti sospiri or l'hanno spinta, che nel mio mare orribil notte e verno. Ov altrui noie a sé doglie e tormenti porta, non altro, già da longa vita, disarmata di vele e di governo. Happy to introduce our final presentation by Miguel Robertson and Kyle Sullivan. Miguel has composed music for a piece which consists of 3 parts titled Fatal Deity, and Kyle will be singing the poems in Italian.
First I will read the poems in English. Sorriderti by Alfonso Gatto. Smiling at you is a bit like dying, offering the word to that light earth, to the sounding shell, to the evening sky, to each thing alone that we love with our own heart. Second poem is Ognuno sta solo by Salvatore Quasimodo. Each one of us is alone in the earth's heart, pierced by a ray of light, and suddenly it's night.
Before we listen to the music, I wanted to say that I composed this music as an experimental project, and that it has only one idea, and it's to protest against all the things that are destroying the art these days. So enjoy the music.
Porgere la parola
Thank you.